Seahawks fans, wherever you may be. Thanks for listening to the show. Join your hosts, Bill Alvstad and Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Hey, hi, Seahawks fans. Welcome back to another episode of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with co-host Keith Myers here to talk Seahawks football. We are previewing the Jets game on Sunday. Seahawks traveling to New York for the game. High of 37 degrees in the forecast, but appears to be dry at this point. Welcome in. Lots to talk about.
The Jets are an interesting team, but not in the ways that you want to be interesting in the NFL. Lots to talk about, including a former Seahawks quarterback getting passed over as a team tries to tank. So let's get to it.
Yeah, he might have made them too big, the Giants you're talking about.
Drew Lock, who's been the backup with Daniel Jones getting released. Instead of going to Drew Lock, they went to third stringer. I don't even know his first name. His last name is DeVito. And that is easily an attempt.
Danny DeVito.
Yes, like the actor.
I have no idea. I don't know.
Hopefully he's not as athletic as the actor too. It's Tommy DeVito. But yeah, this appears to be an attempt to just tank the hell out of the rest of the season and get a high draft pick.
Which they were trending towards anyway, but
true.
So let's get you caught up on the news stuff, transaction wise and player movement. Uchenna Nwasu is slated to return to practice this week. Won't play this weekend, according to Mike McDonald, but could be available on the roster as early as next week. That's good news. Just for some depth pieces, we haven't really seen Nwasu since his first season. Essentially, he's been just injured so much, which unfortunate for him, but good player, solid player nonetheless. Haven't seen him in this defense. I don't really know where he fits and all that kind of stuff. And we seem to be trending in the right direction. So I'm sure they'll ease him back in, but it's nice to have another piece, reinforcement.
Well, he would be the starter on Dre Jones's side. If he was,
but Dre Jones has been playing better the last couple of weeks as the defense has improved. So I'm not sure he jumps right in and starts.
No, I don't think he jumps right in and starts either. But if he was fully healthy, that's where he's slated to play. So,
correct.
I mean, this guy's played 20 snaps this year, and he got hurt after 6 games last year. So he's played 20 snaps in over a calendar year. Like, great player, but I think at this point it's best if we keep our expectations low as he gets back healthy and works his way back into things.
Listen, if he can come back in and play the last 4 games and be available in the playoffs, gives the team a great opportunity to see if they want to retain that contract next year or readjust it or cut him loose, and figure out if he fits in this defense in 2025, because really that's what this thing is all about. The nice thing about this defense currently is every single player that is currently starting and playing a significant rotation role is going to be back in 2025, assuming they re-sign Jones at linebacker. That's really the only piece, significant piece that needs to be determined. Now, you can argue, while the defensive back room is somewhat unsettled, and that is true. Just Joby and Nehemiah Pritchett, Trey Brown, who's been benched at this point. Those need to be kind of figured out, but Witherspoon and Woolen are definitely going to be back, and then they build around those guys. Okay, so transaction-wise, Seahawks claim safety AJ Finley off of waivers from the Chargers to make room on the 53-man roster. They released Miles Adams. No surprise there. Miles was a healthy scratch quite often and played a minor role. And then Seattle also signed running or defensive back Ryan Cooper and wide receiver Cornell Powell to the practice squad, released running back Britain Brown and defensive back Fayon Hicks from the practice squad. Okay. So just to get kind of a general idea where you're at after the last 2 or 3 weeks, specifically this last game, as far as the defense is concerned, I kind of know where you're at, but as a whole, including the offense, where are you at with this team? Have they turned the corner enough to where you're expecting now them to come out and play a certain way, or are you still fairly cautious?
Oh, I'm expecting the defense to come out and be really good. They have been for 3 weeks in a row. Um, and they started showing signs the week before that, even though it wasn't quite enough. Um, Pretty much since the Ernest Jones trade, I'm expecting them to be playoff ready. The offense has me very concerned. I think in the end, unless the offense can figure out some of the things that are wrong with it, um, this is gonna, everything's gonna kind of hinge on that. Um, and are they capable of winning enough games to get into the playoffs? Yes, absolutely. Um, but I'm not confident they're going to do it. I think they're going to find ways to trip up in a couple of places they shouldn't, and that'll cost them. And it's all just because the offense is too inconsistent.
Yeah. I mean, that's really what it's come down to, right? So the defense is doing enough to put the offense in a position to win games. And can the offense do it? I mean, Seattle hasn't even scored more than 20 points since week 7. They just seem discombobulated still. The emphasis has been put on getting the run game going. Still, even with that emphasis and working on it all the time, and Mike McDonald and reinforcing that message over and over again to their coaching staff and to their players, they haven't been able to do it. The run game is really the culprit at the end of the day. Just in this last game, the Pro Football Focus grades in the run game, run blocking grades, Oluwatimi 58.8, Christian Haynes 58.2, Abe Lucas 50.3, Charles Cross 49.8, Laken Tomlinson 40.1. Those are grades across the boards. They're all completely mediocre to trending to bad.
Where was Abe
Not hinging
Lucas in
everything
that?
on Pro Football Focus, but he was right in the middle, 50.3. And that's running the ball. Now, and they'll show up. I mean, when you look at the tape and when you look at the game in general, that's what you're getting. You're getting an offensive line that has no push up front and can't really get to the second level to help a running back who's getting hit more often than not in the backfield before he gets a chance to go. Leads the league um, in touches before contact before being able to get going. And then he breaks tackles at a pretty decent rate once he gets out there in the open, but he's working from a deficit that he's just league average, really at this point, which is a shame for him because he's obviously not a league average running back. And so we just need to figure that out. And then red zone mistakes, Gino continues to make those week after week. We've seen, and while he makes plays to get us out of those holes and sometimes secures wins and looks amazing, other times he's throwing into problem areas and causes turnovers that we have to climb back out of. So all in all, it just makes it really difficult for the offense to kind of get this thing going. It almost seems like it's baked in for this year, but I still have hope, a little glimmer that we do have the personnel if we can figure it out. I think a lot of this goes on to rookie head offensive coordinator Ryan Grubb. He's not, I for me, doing enough to help that weak offensive line make up for some of the talent deficits that they have in that area. Or even if they don't have the talent deficit, something else is going wrong. So, I mean,
Well, there's a
those
talent
guys
deficit.
individually are talented. You know, you can say what you want about Tomlinson, but everybody else has got really nice upside. And
yeah, Tomlinson was really, really good earlier in his career, but he hasn't been good. Like, he's had 2 mediocre seasons before this one. So I think expecting him to be any more than he's been, I think, is asking a lot. He's been bad, but that's kind of what I expected coming in. That Christian Haynes hasn't been able to supplant him on the field has been really, really disappointing.
yeah. So, let's get to this Jets game. So, for me, it really boils down to, Seattle's offense has some deficits to overcome on their offense. The Jets defense is legit. They've got some nice push up front, generate some pressure on quarterbacks. They've got a really nice back end on the defensive back in the middle of the defense. So their defense is really pretty good and can hold Seattle in check, given what Seattle's shown us so far on offense. Seattle always has the opportunity to kind of break out of that, but we'll see. And then our defense
They're going to have a
is
hard
at
time.
this point.
I was going to say Seattle's going to have a hard time running the ball against this defense. Their run stop win rate by their defensive linemen is 3rd in the NFL. And so they beat blocks up front against the run, and the Seahawks can't block for the run. So this is going to be a game where Geno's going to have to carry the team, whether we want them to get the running game going or not. I just don't see it happening.
And they're good defending the pass. They're second in the NFL in passing yards allowed, and they're also second in the NFL on completion percentage allowed against them. EPA per dropbacks, they're right in the middle of the road, though. Passer rating allowed right in the middle of the road. So, teams get ahead on the Jets and then turn to running the ball. Sometimes that's more effective than other times. I think you can wear this defense down by doing that. Other teams have, but Seattle hasn't shown its ability to do that yet. That is the concerning area in this game for me is, can Seattle control the clock? We've seen, Aaron Rodgers come alive when given enough time. I think Seattle's pass rush can affect him when we're on defense, but it'll be an interesting game. They're only 3 wins. Okay, so it's a dysfunctional team that has talent, but has definitely not put it all together so far. Statistically, overall, when you blend the offense and defense and so forth, we're clearly ahead of them on most categories, if as far as DVOA and so forth.
Well, I will say that Seattle's Achilles heel has been its offensive line, and the Jets' offensive line is not any better. Like, it's one of the worst in the NFL. If you look at just percentage points, they're the same on pass block win rate and run block win rate. But these two teams, you have to go out to decimal points to find a difference. And technically, Seattle is ahead of the Jets in pass blocking and behind the Jets in run blocking. But again, it's multiple decimal points out in the percentage before you find a difference. Their offensive line is terrible, which is only going to help. I mean, Seattle has been a great defensive team since the Ernest Jones trade, and you're up against a bad offensive line and a quarterback who's really struggling and having the worst year of his career. The defense should be able to do what it needs to do. Can the offense do what it needs to do to get them the win?
Yes.
That's the question.
Yeah, I agree with that. Right. Quinnen Williams is essentially Leonard Williams, They're back to back on pressure rates and win rates and so forth in the NFL, and both top 40 players from that position. Um, you could argue they're easily close to top 10, but statistically they're ranked about 22, 23 together back to back in those categories. And then you've got Will McDonald, the defensive end, originally from USC. I think Seattle was interested in him in the draft when he came out. He's been really pretty good. Javon Kinlaw is there in the middle. Just a lot of nice players. They got Sauce Gardner. He's been struggling a little bit just because teams are trying to take advantage where they can against the Jets. DJ Reed's there. We all remember DJ Reed. But I think Seattle, you'd mentioned, the struggles with running the ball. I think, they're going to try to continue to want to do that. The ball is going to be very cold in this game, and we'll see how that affects Geno. Likely not. You could say this is a revenge game for Geno. Well, yeah, it's been a long time since he's been with the Jets, so he's probably not even thinking about that anymore.
I'm sure he's been
I don't
asked
know what
about
to
it so many
expect.
times this week that
Yeah,
he remembers.
true.
But I'm sure it's more of a revenge game against all of the reporters that have asked him about that stuff. He's so tired of those questions because every time anyone asks him, it's something about the Jets and his time there, and he's over it. He's the Seahawks quarterback and has been for a while.
Absolutely. So, the thing that worries me about this game is the pass protection. The Jets defensive rank is second in the NFL in sack percentage. And it's a little bit of a concern, and the completion percentage allowed and so forth is the second lowest. So they do a good job affecting the pocket, affecting the timing and quarterback and so forth.
Their
Geno
pass rush
seems to
win rate. Their pass rush win rate is 14th. So middle of the road. Which I find interesting given the rest of their stats. Like statistically, they look like they're very good, but then you look at like their win rates by their defensive linemen, their pass rushing, and it's right in the middle of the league, which means they're getting home. They're probably blitzing a lot and bringing extra pressure, and that's concerning when you can't block anyone like Seattle.
Well, Seattle also can take advantage of that sometimes with Geno. Geno's been pretty good historically at taking advantage of blitzing, but this year he's been down. So I would definitely, if I was the Jets, I would be sending people because Seattle has shown it can't really effectively run the ball. They become one dimensional on offense, and that would be the game plan for sure. Until Seattle can work around that and show that it can do other things, that's the way the defenses are going to be attacking them. Okay, so with all that said, where are Seattle's key advantages if you were on offense for Seattle?
I think the key advantage would be DK Metcalf on the outside, especially if they're not going to move Sauce Gardner with him. I mean, and Sauce has struggled a little bit this year. He hasn't been the all pro that you've seen in the past. But if they don't move him, that means that you've got 6'4" DK Metcalf up against 5'10" DJ Reed. And that's a matchup that they should be exploiting early and often in this game. Just throw it up there and let your guy, he's twice the size of the defensive back, go up and get it. And I think that they're in a situation that they should be able to exploit that. And that's the type of thing that DJ Reed, he was a slot corner earlier in his career and with Seattle, but they've moved him to the outside because that's where they needed him. And he's been good. But he is a smaller guy, and you've got DK Metcalf. Why wouldn't you attack that over and over again?
Yeah, we just need to overcome, Seattle's offensive rank of 23rd in EPA and 20th in drop back percentage EPA for Geno in the last 10 games since week 5, essentially. The Before that, Seattle was doing well. Seattle was ranked 11th in EPA per play in the first 4 games, and since
And
then it's
that
just been a complete wreck.
and that was with Denver's defense on the schedule, which has been good, like really good all year, and New England's, which they're a bad team, but they're a bad team offensively. Their defense is still capable of getting after people. So it's not like they were just beating up on terrible teams. Um, there was some talent there. And I mean, yeah, and then the Lions game, right? Like that is a good football team. Um, and the offense couldn't quite keep up because the defense couldn't do anything. But they scored a lot of points. They moved the ball a lot, had the yards there. So what's changed from then when they were able to move the ball and score points to now where they just can't? Like what's different?
I don't know. I mean, I guess it's the way that teams are defending Geno Smith primarily, in that we weren't running the ball very well even in those first 4 weeks.
No.
But Geno's been making more mistakes and um, cutting off drives and red zone opportunities. To me,
Yeah. I
that's
mean,
not
Gina's got
good.
to
I
take
mean,
care of the ball. He's got to take care of the
yeah.
football. He can't keep turning it over at the rate that he's been doing. And for this team to continue to win, like he's got to get all of that under control.
Well, when you ask a guy to throw 40 times a game with a suspect offensive line, you're going to get mixed results, and and that's what we see. And he's
Yeah,
not overcoming that. I mean, and
he's making
I
a lot
just
of bad decisions. So
that right, but he's also
that's
throwing
not.
it at the league high. So it's one of those things where if he was throwing 10 times less a game, he'd have probably 3 or 4 less interceptions. It's
No.
just
He leads the NFL in interceptions. He has more than any
he's
other
having
player.
essentially the same season that Sam Howell had the year prior to coming here last year.
Yeah. Okay. Sam Howell had close to 40 touchdowns to go with his, 25
Right.
interceptions. Geno's only got 12. So he's also taken a ton of sacks. His QBR is pretty low.
I thought that Sam Howell had 20
Was it 20
20
some?
touchdowns, 20 interceptions.
I thought he had a
I don't
better
know.
year
I can't
than that.
remember.
Like it was all the
I don't think
interceptions
so.
were killer, but he
It
had a
was
ton of
basically
yards
the
and stuff.
same. It was the same kind of year that basically got offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy fired, along with their entire staff. And Sam Howell was given up on and traded. I mean, and
Yeah,
Geno's
you're
having
right. It's
basically the same,
21 and 21. Sacked 65 times in the year, which was the most out of
which is which is essentially what Geno is trending towards.
yeah
20 and 20.
20 and 20 and 65 sacks. So yeah, that it's that offensive performance in Washington got that entire coaching staff fired. Um, and that's what
Including the quarterback,
yes, and that's what
essentially.
Seattle's getting out of its offense and its quarterback this year. So
Right.
I
So how
think
much do
that
you attribute that to Geno Smith, and how much do you attribute that to a new offensive coordinator and a um, offensive line coach that are rookies in the NFL?
I give equal blame to all of it. Because the coaching staff is not helping Geno out, and Geno is not helping Geno out. Um, the one thing that Geno is doing that Sam Howell didn't do is putting together some brilliant drives at the end of games. And that's where Geno has separated himself from, that comparison, is that he's a guy that just when it comes down to it at the end of games, you feel comfortable with the ball in his hands and he's gonna make plays, and he has.
Now, if we can just get that started in the first quarter, we'd be
Yeah.
good. Now, with that said, our defense is crazy this last 3 weeks. I mean, I think
Oh
we're a
yeah,
top 5
defense has been
defense
great.
overall. In fact, our defensive rankings for the entire season have literally gone from upper 20s, low defensive rankings, to right in the middle of the pack. Points allowed, we're ranked now 14th. Yards allowed, we're ranked 20th. Yards per play, we're 18th. We were 27th 4 games ago. EPA per play, we're now 15th. Third down percentage allowed, we're now 17th. We were in the mid 20s on these stats just a
mid to
short
late
time
20s
ago,
on all of them, and
which
that's a
shows you how
huge
good we've
turnaround.
been. It's
Yeah,
a
because it's
huge
averages,
turnaround.
right? And so
Right.
you're 9 games into the season, in the last 3 weeks, so a third of your sample size, you've made that much difference. You've had 2/3 of the sample size was being bad. And then with just the 1/3 change, you've made a huge difference. That tells you have been significantly better than those stats imply. I would say they've definitely been a top 10 defense the last 3 weeks. When you look what they did to
Here's the big
Arizona.
category for me that's shocking to me. Seattle has allowed explosive plays, 16 plus yards. We're 10th in the NFL, Keith. Explosive runs, where it's 12 plus yards per run, we're ranked 11th. I would have thought for sure that those stats would have pointed to something much worse than that, but that's what it is, which is good for us. I mean, lacking not allowing explosive plays, we only allowed 1 to Arizona all game last game. That's where it's at in the NFL, and they're doing a great job.
And Woolen he was there. He had the receiver had gotten a little separation, but Woolen closed and was there to make a play. It was so close to not being anything. So yeah.
And you mentioned Woolen. The nice thing about them, and one of the things I've noticed over the last 3 weeks, change wise on the defense, is that our big players, our big playmakers, are playing much better now. We've got Devon Witherspoon has been playing much better, I think.
Oh yeah.
I think they were stretching him too thin earlier in the year, just having him trying to do too much. I think moving him closer to the line of scrimmage has really helped and focused his game. Working out of the slot. Kobe Bryant's been playing his best year so far, and has
playing
been
some of his best football of his life.
Ernest Jones shows up, and he's playing well. Tyrese Knight comes in, and he's playing well. Boye Mafe, Derek Hall are starting to get back into it on the edge. That's cued by Leonard Williams having a monster a couple weeks back to back. And it's so fun to watch a defense kind of come together and kind of be the vision that you had at the beginning of the year. You thought maybe they could do it because Mike McDonald's some magician, but they just needed time. They needed time to kind of figure out their roles and figure out what they're really good at and keep working on stuff. So I'm hopeful that the offense can do the same thing. I haven't seen any signs of it, but I'm hopeful that the offensive line can build some continuity here in the next 3-4 weeks and really kind of at least solidify that to where we're somewhat average.
Yeah. I mean, the switch to Oluwatimi at center at least has so far made the snaps more consistent for Geno. He hasn't been any better as a blocker, but he hasn't been any worse either, which is fine. And then
His pass blocking has actually been better.
Okay.
There
Abe Lucas
have been some questionable plays, but
getting Abe Lucas back it will make a difference. You got to give him time to, get in there and get up to game speed. But he's looked significantly better than Stone Forsythe. And so even though he hasn't been great yet, but there are flashes of the old Abe Lucas when you see him. His ability to play on an island, his ability to get downfield, his ability to take a defensive end and drive them off the line of scrimmage.
And pancake them occasionally.
Yes. So he's made his mistakes. He's been beaten a few times. Like, he's been part of the problem the last couple of weeks. But the flashes of the brilliant Abe Lucas have been there. He's just got to get up to speed. And I think we'll start to see that. I heard a thing from Daniel Jeremiah from NFL.com and NFL Network saying that there's only about 8 good right tackles in the NFL, and that Abe Lucas is one of the best of them. And just that quote, I was like, okay, we know that about quarterbacks, right? There's only about 12 quarterbacks for 32 teams. But the right tackle part kind of caught me. And then he said, when he talks to GMs and scouts and everything, and he asks, hey, what do you guys think you need? Every single team will say right tackle. So that's just one of the reasons why Abe Lucas can be so important to this, is because you have an opportunity to be good in a place where no one else is. It's why so many of the top pass rushers rush on the quarterback's right side instead of the blind side. Is because there aren't a lot of good blocking right tackles. And so it gets the quarterback clean to gets the pass rusher clean to the quarterback more often, even though the quarterback can see them coming. You can kind of take that away from him if you got a good right tackle. And so Abe Lucas does matter. He matters a lot.
So in this game, Seattle's defense appears to be about as good as the Jets' defense, and Seattle's offense is about as inept as the Jets' offense. We are similar teams in that respect, in that our defenses are better than our offenses. How do you expect this game to play out, Keith? Can Seattle's offense do enough to be better than the Jets' offense and outscore this team?
Well, let me give you an odd comparison that I think tells you why the Seahawks are the better team overall. Geno Smith, despite all of my complaining about his inconsistency and whatever, has been a significantly better quarterback than Aaron Rodgers this year, which I'm sure people will say that's blasphemy because it's Aaron Rodgers, but Rodgers has not been good.
There's been talk about benching them, but they're so bad overall it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, as
Tyrod
a team,
Taylor's their backup.
As a team, he's been bad enough that you go ahead and continue to play him because he helps you lose and tank for his replacement. And like, he's averaging 6.4 yards per carry, or not carry, yards per pass attempt. That is sad. And yeah, I mean, this is a guy
they don't have enough time to throw the ball down the field, and if they did, I don't know that their receivers are good enough to get the advantage. They've got Devontae Adams, but he's been okay since coming over. Garrett Wilson is the guy, but he's one guy. They've got Xavier Gibson there as well, playing in the slot along with Adams. But yeah, that's it. I mean, that's really all they have. Tyler Conklin, Jeremy Ruckert are their tight ends. They just don't have enough weapons. I mean, obviously Breece Hall and receiving the ball out of the backfield. He's the guy I'm really worried about, if I'm being completely honest, is a breakaway guy that can hit a home run from anywhere on the field. Seen him do it. He's done it this year, even on a bad offense. He's a guy. But other than that,
Kenneth Walker.
There's no big, huge concern.
He's Kenneth Walker. He's a guy that would be having a monster year if the offensive line could block for him even just a little bit. And very similar players, both really fast once they get to the edge. Once you get them in an open field where they can they can just run away from people. Both good out of the backfield receiving the ball, right? They're similar players, and both are not living up to their potential statistically because their offense is so inept.
Yeah.
But yeah,
So
honestly,
which running back has a better game? So
Brees
it's
Hall.
it's such a hard
Um,
thing because
it's such
Seattle's
a hard.
been so bad.
I'm going to say Brees Hall, but not because he has a better game running the ball, because both teams are pretty terrible at that. It's that he's going to get more opportunities out of the backfield. Their offensive
Although Ken
coordinator,
Walker has been getting 6 or 7 touches out of the backfield as a
yeah,
receiver the last
um,
several weeks.
that is true, and they need to continue to do that. They got to find ways to get the ball in his hands, and if you can't run block enough to have Gino turn around and hand it to him, um, get him the ball on some screens, put him out wide, and bubble screen him or bring him across the middle, run an angle route, something that you can do to get him the ball. I'd love to see him line up in the slot and run a wheel route and see if the Jets have the linebacker speed to stay with them and carry that. I
What
don't think they
what's
do.
what should Seattle be doing to counter the aggression that we will probably see with the Jets defense against Geno Smith?
I think you need to see them be creative with their blocking sets. You get a guy like um, AJ Barner and line up a tight end, but then when you see them coming with a blitz, motion him into the backfield as a fullback and let him pick up the blitz from there. And that way you're not forcing your better weapon, which is Ken Walker, to stay in and block. Um, do some things like that. And the other thing is, now that you've got Abe Lucas there on the right side, I'd love to see them have some rolling pockets, right? You don't have to roll him outside where you cut the field in half, but you don't drop him straight back either. Um, you give him a partial rollout to the right side and let him set up there. It makes it so the defense doesn't know where the point is that they're attacking. They have to make changes to that on the fly, and their angles are wrong, and that kind of stuff. So those are the types of things that they can do to help Geno out, give him some more time against the aggression. And if you can get him any time against when the Jets start blitzing, there's people open behind him. And we saw a little bit of that this last week with JSN starting to
We did.
get some productivity when they started blitzing Geno heavily. That's JSN kind of came alive, and I'd like to see Tyler Lockett get more involved in that because he's been really quiet this year. He needs to have a traditional Tyler Lockett game and really just break out for us because um, at some point
Yeah.
this defense or this offense just needs to score some more points.
I think you mentioned Barner. I'd like to see Barner and Fant both be involved more in receiving the ball closer to the line of scrimmage and allowing them to pick up some yardage, take
Mm-hmm.
advantage of some blitzing and so forth, and some open areas behind the line of scrimmage. And so the screen game. I think the screen game is going to be important in this game. Can we be effective doing that? Not just bubble screens, but set up screens where you've got some pulling guys on the offensive line and get Ken Walker some ahead of steam and maybe even JSN coming in off the edge to get the ball on a little quick slant like he did. He almost scored on that one play that he had.
Yeah, that was a little angle
Yeah,
route. I
yeah,
loved that because it was so smart because he starts out. That's what an angle route is you angle out like you're going to go run an out route and then you come in on a slant. Um, and as soon as the defensive back turned his hips to run with JSN outside, he cut in. There's zero chance that cornerback is making a play on the ball. And he just dropped the ball to him right there, 5 yards down the field, and let him run.
yeah. If he breaks
Um,
one tackle, he could have 25 yards easy on those
or in
plays.
that case, it was 40 something. And
40.
um, Cody White gave him a really nice block downfield, too. Got him an extra 10 yards. got him down to the 4. So, and then a couple plays later, the Seahawks smartly got him the ball again in the end zone for the game's only offensive touchdown. So that's the kind of stuff
That's
that you can
crazy to me.
do. That's the kind of stuff that you can do. You can't do it every play because then teams just pick up on it and those passes get picked off. But if you pick your spots and time it right and do them when you know they're coming on a blitz, so the middle linebacker's out of the way, big plays happen. And you just got to keep trying it. You got to keep going for those things and making good calls. So there's some things like that you see, and you're like, okay, there's some possibility here. There's still DK and his size and speed and his ability to run away from people. They just got to find ways to get Geno another second or another half a second so that he can get the ball out of his hands. He's not getting the ball out of his hands quite as fast as he should be, which is what's leading to some of the sacks. But if they can get him another half a second, even with him not getting the ball out fast, he'll still have time to get the ball to one of his playmakers. And that's really what it comes down to. They just need to give Geno a little bit more time, and he'll start picking teams apart.
Okay, so prediction time. I'll go first. I think Seattle is able to score and has maybe even a defensive score again in this game. Can score, I think 20. I'm going to say 24 points, maybe 27. I think the Jets have a hard time getting out of the teens. I think having them score like 13 points, 17 points to me seems about right. So I'm going to say 24-17 Seahawks.
One of the things we have yet to talk about is just general dysfunction. The Jets have fired their coach. They've fired their general manager. They've talked about benching their quarterback, who is known for being aloof and not a team guy anyway. At
3
some
wins, their
point,
season's over.
yeah, their season is over, and they know it. And at some point, guys will start making business decisions. And all you need is a couple of defenders to make a couple business decisions. And this game that sounds like it might be statistically a hard-fought Seahawk win now becomes a blowout. So I'm with you. I think that all of that dysfunction, the fact that this is not a team that has rallied around its interim coach. They're 1-5 with the interim coach.
And that one win was against the Texans, by the way,
which is a good team. Like that was a good win. But other than that, I mean, it just really hasn't been pretty.
But you don't see the Texans score 13 points very often.
Yeah,
that's what happened in that game.
Yeah, they really got after CJ Stroud in that game. That was one of Stroud's worst games as a pro. And he was just under pressure the whole time. And they just didn't have the weapons to give him an out, and that was really the problem. It showed one of the weaknesses of that roster. But I just think that you look at this, and I just think the dysfunction level of the Jets is going to start to mount, and you're going to start to see things just boil over in a bad way for them. I think you had a really good score prediction. I think the Seahawks are in like 24. And I'll give the Jets 16 just because I'm being generous. But yeah, I think
the Cardinals beat them 31-6 a couple weeks ago.
Yes, and that's the same Cardinals team that we just played, right? And well, we played the Cardinals coming off a bye. Now we're playing the Jets coming off a bye, which I find interesting. That's 2 weeks in a row. We play a team coming off a bye. But yeah, the Cardinals coming off a bye couldn't do anything against Seattle's defense with an extra week to prep and game plan and everything. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. So let's go get this win, I think, and then the real test comes. I think the rematch against the Cardinals in Glendale. It's one of those things where this season is getting really interesting to me as far as the remaining schedule. We have got at the Cardinals after this game. And then the Packers and the Vikings both visit Lumen Field in back-to-back weeks, getting us to then after Christmas at Chicago and then at the Rams. No easy game really remaining, except for this one. If you can call this one easy against a top 3 or 4 defense. Not yeah.
It's a 3-win team though. So
it's a 3-win team. Right.
I mean, anyway. Yeah. I mean, I look at all of this and it does kind of feel at this point that every game is a must-win game. They dug themselves a hole getting to 4 and 5.
Sure did.
I think they can afford to lose one more and still make the playoffs.
That would get them to 11.
That would get them to 11 wins. And at 11 wins, you're in.
And I don't want it to be the Jets because they don't.
Yeah.
The margin for error needs to be available to, for the Vikings or the Rams again, or the Packers, even the Cardinals, at home could be a dangerous game. So this team also has the outside chance to go 6-0 in the last 6 games. With the defense the way it's playing, and if the offense can somehow just improve enough, this team could be dangerous.
Detroit's really the only team running away with the division. You go 6-0, get to 12 wins, which would make you super happy because that would make your prediction right from the beginning of the season.
I wouldn't believe it if you told me the way that they got there. I would just say that's crazy that this team dropped 4 or 5 and then still got to 12 wins. What?
Didn't they drop 5 of 6? Because after
I'd have to look again.
I think they dropped 5 of 6, and they got all 5 of those losses that they have grouped together with only the Atlanta win in the middle. But yeah, for them to do that and then still get to 12 wins would be insane. But yeah, I mean, if they get to 11 wins, maybe they're going to get a home playoff game at that point because nobody's keep catching them in the West, because that means they will have probably beaten Arizona and have the tiebreaker and a game advantage, and then you don't lose another game. So they're gonna have a home. They may have a chance to have a couple of home games if they win one, because
right now they're the 3rd seed in the NFC.
Yeah. So you win out, or you win 5 of 6 down the stretch, and you end up as the number 2 seed. You can get a couple home games before you have to go on the road in the playoffs, assuming they can win in the playoffs. But
what a wild, crazy ride! I mean,
it's been a weird season, and it's
been
only
a weird season.
weirder.
But you could almost have predicted that, if you were really kind of thoughtful. And I think you were in your prediction show. You ended up at 10 wins, and that predicts that you're going to have an up and down season. And they've had an up and down season.
And I had them at 5 and 5. Which the team, got to. They were at 4 and 5, which I never had them that low. They lost to get to 5 and 5, but I had them at 5 and 5, and then having a good, end of the year, putting a lot of stuff together and getting to 10 wins. And I prefaced that with the last game against the Rams being that if the Seahawks have nothing to play for and the Rams are fighting to get in as the last wild card team, which is kind of where I expected them to be, that Seattle's going to rest too many people and they're going to lose. But yeah, we'll see. That's not the case anymore. They won't be resting anybody.
It's going to be interesting to look forward to. Okay, so let's get out of here. Let's get this win on Sunday. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody, and to you, Keith, and to your family, and to all the Seahawk families out there for sure. And you can find Keith on Twitter and some other places. We just don't know exactly where to find Keith, but you can certainly find him here. And if you leave a comment on our YouTube channel for Keith, I will make sure that he gets it. How about that?
I am on Blue Sky now. I don't think I've actually commented or said anything, but I have I have created an account to, lurk and see what that
Are you still at
platform is
Myers
like.
NFL?
I believe I am.
Okay. So that's where you can find him, at Myers NFL on Blue Sky.
Yep.
And you can find me there as well, at NWC Huck. And find the show on your favorite podcast platform and our YouTube channel, and hit that subscribe button, share it, like it, leave us a comment, and let's go get this one. And we'll see you after the game or on Monday for a recap show, and something to look forward to as we move into the rest of the season. So until next time, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NWCHawk, Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.